Hi, I'm Birgit O'Connor, and today I'd like to show you how to simplify a building and not paint everything that you see. We're going to focus on shape, shadow, and the amount of water to use. Today I'll be doing a painting of this historic school in the Point Reyes National Seashore. I really don't need to paint every detail because this particular school can actually be anywhere. It could really be out in wine country or in a field. What I really want from this is the shape and the shadows. The building itself doesn't have a lot of windows and can be a little difficult to create depth. So in order to help me see the value of the shadows better, I'm going to refer to a black and white print. I've already gone ahead and created a very simple pencil sketch, just so I get the angles and the line of the building. Since I'm working on such a small piece of paper, in order for me to have the control that I want, I'm leaving the paper dry. In my palette, I'll create a little puddle of cobalt blue. You can see that I don't have a ton of water in here. It's just enough to make it transparent and move easily. To help me get more of that looser watercolor effect, but still have control, I'm going to be using a number 20 wash modeler. You can also use a 1-inch flat. I'll test my color on the side of my print just to see if it's somewhere within the range that I'm looking for. And if it is, then I'll start applying it to my painting. Since I'm working on dry paper, I need to make sure that I have enough water in my pigment so the color can move. And I'll also need to work quickly, or I can end up with brush lines on my painting. Working within the boundary of a pencil line does a couple things. It helps me know how far I can go and how much water I can add, without the painting looking dry and overworked. It also has a nicer visual effect. Now as I'm bringing my sky down to where my landscape's going to go, I'm going to lighten the value. I'm covering the area where my hill's going to go. That way I won't have overlapping lines. I'm drawing the water down and around my dry building. I want those crisp edges. I'll need to let this area dry just a little. So taking another look at my reference photo, I'm going to evaluate where I'm going to place my shadows. I've gone ahead and added just a little burnt sienna into my color mix of the sky. That way I get a little more of a gray color. And I really don't need to paint them on. All I need to do is just touch the paper. I don't want to overdo it. I just want to create the suggestion of shadow underneath the eaves and on the side of the building. For this particular painting, using a flat brush makes it much easier to get those angles. It looks much freer than a painted on line. Then, so I have a better approach to this angled shadow, I'm just going to turn my paper. Then fill that shadow in. And for the little cupola on top of the building, I'll use a number 3 synthetic. To help me give the impression of the shadow here, I'll use a broken line. That way it'll look a little more interesting and not draw the attention to just this one area. To help prevent the bottom of the shadow line from drying into a hard edge, I'm going to use a damp but not wet brush to soften the edge. While the sky is still damp, I'm going to create some summer hills. I'll be using a mix of quinacridone gold and a little burnt sienna. With my number 8 Sable Synthetic blend, I'll just dab a little color on the hill. You can see that I'm not really brushing it on. I'm allowing the color to feather out into the drying background. My intention is to create some bushes and different types of texture in the grass. And if we take a look at my color photograph, you'll be able to get a better idea of what I'm trying to achieve. You can see that it's not solid, it has broken color. You can also tell that I'm not really trying to match the color that's in the photograph. I'm thinking of something a little more lively. And while it's still damp, I'm going to add another color into it. Here I'll add a little permanent sap green mixed with a little burnt sienna. I might even add a little touch of quinacridone gold into the mix. The idea is to keep it loose and let the color do the work for you, not that you're deliberately trying to paint it on. You can also see how the dry edges of the roofline prevents the color from spreading. Let me give you an idea of what I'm trying to work towards with the grass. I'm laying my foundation down before I do any details. So at this point, I'm going to let the background dry and work on my foreground. I'll be using my number 30 natural hair brush and dab some water on. I intended this to be clean water, but it's not. And that's all right because it makes it easier for you to see. Then using my number 20 wash mottler, I'll just add a few strokes of my grass color here too. I'll let some of my edges disappear into the water on the surface and others I'll let dry this way. Using my number 14 round sable synthetic blend, I'm going to intensify the color, adding a little more quinacridone gold in a darker value. Using the two different brush types makes it more interesting and adds more texture. I don't want my grasses to appear overworked, so I'm going to incorporate a little more water. And just bring my color up to the pencil line, so I have a nice clean edge. To help give the impression of some bushes next to the buildings, I'm going to create a little mixture of permanent sap green and a little quinacridone gold. Then allow that mixture to bleed down and blend into some of that damp color of the grasses. This helps to do a couple things. It incorporates some of the color from the background down into the foreground, and it helps prevent any hard lines that can happen when the building or the shadow of the building dries. Now let's get that roof on. I'm going to be using a combination of French ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, but I've created a darker value, meaning less water, more pigment, and using my number 20 wash mottler, I'm just going to brush it on. And to help me get the right angle, I'll just turn my paper. The difference with this little schoolhouse compared to some of the barns that I've done in the past is that I've waited for the background color to completely dry before I went ahead and applied the roof. That way I was able to get a nice clean line. The real challenge of this little painting is about keeping it simple and not overdoing it. We all have a natural tendency of wanting to paint every blade of grass, but here we're just trying to create the impression of it. Keep it simple, and to get that jeweled-like effect on the grass, let it completely dry before you apply another layer. And for the hill in the background, it's all right that it isn't definitive and it has that blurred wet into wet technique. That way it brings the attention back to the buildings and to the foreground, and helps give the painting depth. So until next time, happy painting! For more information on my books, DVDs, workshops, and online programs, please visit my website, birgitoconnor.com.